He had everything money could buy. A private island. A fleet of jets. A net worth larger than the GDP of some entire countries. And on a Tuesday morning in March, he walked out of his office, got into his car, and was never seen again. No body. No ransom note. No trace. Just an empty chair at the head of a billion-dollar empire, and a mystery that, to this day, has never been solved. This is the story of the billionaire who vanished. His name was Julian Voss. By the age of 34, he had built one of the most secretive and successful investment firms in the world. He didn't do interviews. He didn't attend galas. He didn't even have a public photograph that was less than 10 years old. What he did have was money. An almost incomprehensible amount of it. Estimates put his fortune at over $11 billion, built quietly, methodically, through a firm that specialized in something most of his competitors didn't fully understand. Predicting collapse before it happened. Julian made his fortune by betting against things other people believed in. He shorted housing markets before they crashed. He pulled out of currencies before they devalued. He sold off entire industries months before the headlines caught up. People called him a genius. Some called him something else. Lucky. Suspicious. Connected to information he shouldn't have had. Whatever the truth was, Julian Voss never explained himself. He let the money speak. And then, one ordinary Tuesday, he disappeared. The day began like any other. His housekeeper later told investigators that Julian left his estate at 7:42 in the morning, as he did most days. He was dressed for work. He took his usual black sedan. He told her he'd be back for dinner. He arrived at his office at 8:15. Security footage, the last confirmed footage of Julian Voss that has ever surfaced, shows him walking through the lobby, nodding to the front desk, and stepping into the private elevator that led to his executive suite on the top floor. He was alone. He stayed in his office for most of the morning. At 11:50, his assistant brought him a coffee. She said he seemed completely normal. Maybe a little distracted. He was looking at something on his second monitor that she didn't see. At 12:30, he told her he had a personal matter to attend to and that he'd be stepping out for a few hours. He left his phone on his desk. He left his laptop open. He took nothing with him except his car keys and his wallet. He walked out of the building at 12:41 p.m. Security cameras captured him crossing the lobby, exiting through the main doors, and walking toward the parking garage. And then, nothing. The cameras inside the parking garage, all 14 of them, had gone down for routine maintenance 40 minutes earlier. Julian Voss walked into a blind spot. And he never walked out of it. By 7 p.m., when Julian hadn't returned home and wasn't answering his phone, his housekeeper called his head of security. By 9 p.m., his executive team had been notified. By midnight, his car was found. It was parked perfectly, in its usual spot in the garage, exactly where he always left it. The keys were not in it. His wallet was not in it. There was no sign of struggle. No blood. No damage. Nothing out of place. It was as if Julian Voss had simply walked into the garage and stepped out of existence. The investigation that followed was unlike anything most missing person cases ever see. Because Julian Voss wasn't just a missing person. He was a missing $11 billion question mark, and that meant federal investigators, private security firms hired by his own company, and at least 2 intelligence-adjacent contractors quietly got involved within the first 48 hours. The first theory was simple: kidnapping. A man worth that much money is a target. Investigators expected a ransom call within days. It never came. No demand. No proof of life. No contact of any kind from anyone claiming to hold him. The second theory was darker, that someone wanted him gone, permanently, and had succeeded in making it look clean. Julian's firm had made powerful enemies. Companies he had shorted into bankruptcy. Executives who had lost fortunes betting against his predictions. Entire hedge funds that collapsed in the wake of moves he made. Investigators built a list of people with motive. The list had over 200 names on it. But not one piece of physical evidence connected any of them to his disappearance. The third theory, and the one that gained the most traction over time, was the strangest. That Julian Voss hadn't been taken at all. That he had left. Here's what investigators found when they dug into his financial activity in the weeks before he vanished. 3 weeks before his disappearance, Julian had quietly liquidated a position worth nearly $200 million, funds that, to this day, have never been fully traced. They moved through a chain of shell companies so complex that forensic accountants spent over a year following the trail before losing it completely in an offshore banking system known for its secrecy. 10 days before he vanished, he met with a private attorney for 2 hours. The content of that meeting has never been disclosed. Attorney-client privilege survived even a federal investigation. 5 days before he vanished, his housekeeper noticed he had been unusually quiet at dinner. When she asked if everything was all right, he reportedly looked at her for a long moment and said, "Some things you build aren't meant to last forever." She thought it was just one of his philosophical moods. In hindsight, investigators wondered if it was something else entirely. A goodbye. There's one more detail that has fueled theories for years. 18 months after Julian Voss disappeared, a hiker in a remote part of New Zealand's South Island uploaded photos from a multi-day trek through an isolated mountain region. In the background of one photo, half obscured by tree cover, taken from a significant distance, was a man standing outside a small wooden cabin. The hiker hadn't even noticed him when she took the picture. She posted the photos to a hiking forum days later, and it was another user. Someone who recognized the build, the posture, the way the man was standing with his hands in his pockets, who flagged it. The image was blurry. Inconclusive. Experts who analyzed it couldn't confirm or deny it was Julian Voss. But it was enough to reignite the entire case. Investigators traveled to the region. The cabin, when they found it, was empty. It had clearly been lived in, recently. Supplies. A generator. No identification of any kind. Whoever had been staying there was gone. No trace. No name. No proof. Just an empty cabin in the mountains, and a blurry photograph that may or may not have shown a man who had once controlled $11 billion. To this day, Julian Voss has never been declared legally dead. His company is still run by a board of trustees, operating under instructions he apparently set up years before he vanished, instructions so detailed and so specific that some employees believe he had been planning his disappearance for a very long time. His fortune, much of it still unaccounted for, sits frozen in legal limbo, tied up in a case with no resolution and, increasingly, no urgency. Because here's the question nobody can quite answer. If a man worth $11 billion wanted to vanish, completely, permanently, untraceably, does the world actually have the power to find him? Or did Julian Voss do the one thing his money could never buy him while he was visible? And simply walk away from being found? Somewhere out there, in a cabin in the mountains, on an island with no name, or nowhere at all, the answer is still waiting. And the billionaire who vanished has never once tried to give it to us.